In this video we're going to show you how to use your snap tools. Now the snap tools, they work in conjunction with other drawing tools. They actually change the behavior of the drawing tool. Okay, now the snap tools are found on the far left side of the program that start with the S here, which is the snap on off indicator, and they continue down to the quadrant snap here. Okay, if you do not see these tools, you can go to the View menu and go to Show Advanced Toolbars, and they should appear. Now, the first one that we're going to talk about is the Grid Point Snap. And whenever I select a snap tool, you'll see there's a blue box indicating that that snap tool is on. Okay, I'll just select a tool such as my Close Paver tool here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Now, if you see that you have a grid point snap on, you'll get a little red indicator that follows your cursor around. It's a little red dot, and what that will do is it will click on or snap to a grid point on the drawing grid. So you'll see here it easily snaps from grid point to grid point like so. Okay, so that's where we would use the grid point snap. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll back out. And the next snap tool that we're going to talk about is the endpoint snap. So I'll turn the grid point off by tapping the G there on the toolbar. Also, I can turn tools on or off by simply pressing the keyboard. So the letter G on the keyboard toggles that grid point snap on and off. I'll press the E on the keyboard, or I can click on the endpoint snap here, and that will turn the endpoint snap on. Now here I'm going to use my edging tool. I'll click on it, and what I want to do is I want to attach a piece of edging right to the corner of this foundation wall. So when I do that, I have an endpoint that is the corner of that wall. So I'll click, and then I'll pull my edging out like so. Okay, and I'll just come over to this corner and click there, and I'm done. So I right click. So what that does is it takes that piece of edging and it attaches it to the end point of that wall, which is actually at the center of the wall. So it's a 6-inch wall, and it comes in 3 inches on each side to find the center of the corner there. Okay, so that's where we would use an endpoint. So all the corners of this foundation wall would all be endpoints. Okay, now the next one we're going to talk about is the jump snap. Now the jump snap is the letter J on the keyboard, and you'll see that when I select that, I get a little box here that pops up that wants me to enter a distance. Okay, so a jump snap, what it's going to do is it's going to jump from a given distance to another point from an original endpoint. Okay, so where I can use this frequently is when I'm placing doors and windows on a foundation wall. So in order to find a door or window, I'm going to go to my symbol library, and under miscellaneous you'll find doors and windows. Okay, I already have my door library selected here, and if I select the French door 60, the external, that's an external 60-inch door. Okay, and again I have my jump snap indicator on. Now my jump snap, I'm going to change the distance to 8 feet, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this and place it from 8 feet from an endpoint. So from this point right here, I'm going to jump 8 feet. So it's going to place that door, or at least the edge of the door, 8 feet from an existing endpoint. So I'll release my click, and then I can either swing it out or in, and when I get it to the right position, I'll click again, and it adds that door. And if I measure that, that should be 8 feet from this point up to this point. Okay, so that's how we use our jump snap. Okay, the next snap tool is my midpoint snap. So if I select my midpoint snap, and I'll again select my edging tool, and when I mouse over a line, it will find the midpoint in between two endpoints. So I have a midpoint here, I have another one here, I have another one there. So it's this middle of that line that I'm trying to mouse over there that it's finding for me. Okay, so that's the midpoint snap. The next one is the nearest point snap. And I'll go ahead and turn my midpoint off and turn my nearest point on. What the nearest point does is it finds the nearest point on an existing line. I don't have to be on an endpoint to snap. I can be anywhere within a line. Now for this example, I'm also going to turn on my endpoint snap, which is the letter E up here. Okay, so I'm going to draw a paver in here, so I'm going to snap to the endpoints, and then I'm going to come over and snap to the property line. I'll use my close paver tool here. Now when I mouse over that line, you'll see that I get a little square that indicates that I'm on the endpoint of that line. I click there, and then I'll move up, and I'll click there when I see the square. Okay, now I'm going to move over. Now the endpoint of the property line is down here and then up here. Okay, but what I want to do is I want it someplace in the middle here. So you'll see that when I mouse down here, it's allowing me to snap directly to this line. So when my line gets pretty straight, I'll just click there and then I'll pull it down, and you'll see that it just sucks my cursor right to that line pretty easily. Okay, when my lower paver is relatively straight, I'll click again, and then I'll right click, and that drops that down. Now the advantage here is that since I use the nearest point snap, my paver line is directly on top of my property line, so I don't have a secondary line where you can see a gap or an overlap on those lines. The same way as if we go over here to the foundation wall, that line will be right at the center of that wall. Okay, another little trick that we can do with this nearest point snap is we can snap to the line actually that we've already drawn. So previously in previous videos we've talked about the edit vertice mode. So I went ahead and double clicked on the paver there to get into the edit vertice mode. So when I mouse over that line, I can add a point. Well, when I click on it and then pull it away and then I pull it back, and I see that indicator that indicates that I'm on that line with the nearest point, I can drop it, and it drops it directly on that line. So it's still a nice straight line. It just has an extra point there in the middle. Okay, I'll do the same up here. So again, I'll drop it right on top of itself. Now what this is going to allow me to do is to easily create a flare on that driveway. Okay, so I can flare that out just by grabbing those endpoints just like that. Okay, another way we can use that is, let's say I'm going to go ahead here and draw a line like so, which is a retaining wall. Again, I'll double click on it, and you'll see that when I grab that endpoint, okay, I get a little red indicator there to tell me that I'm right on that line. So it's staying right on that line. So I can just shorten that line up very easily just by using that nearest point snap. Now the next snap tool that we're going to talk about is the base point snap. Now a base point of a symbol is typically it's the center of a symbol. So on this plant you'll see that the center point is a yellow diamond. Well, that's the base point of that particular symbol. Now where we find that the base point snap comes in very handy is whenever we do irrigation. Now on irrigation symbols, typically the base point of the symbol is where the actual head is. It's not at the center of the symbol, it's offset wherever the head is placed on that particular symbol. So if I'm trying to place my irrigation lines, I'll go ahead and select the sprinkler pipe tool, and I'll start a line out here, and then you'll see that when I get close to that, I can click on that base point very, very easily, so that I don't have any shortness of lines, and I click right on where the actual head is, so I can have an accurate measurement on my irrigation sprinkler pipe. Now the next tool that we're going to do here is the perpendicular snap tool. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off the rest of these snap tools, and I'll use the perpendicular snap. Okay, and let's go ahead and scroll over so we can see this better. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to actually turn the endpoint snap on. I'm going to use my retaining wall tool, and I'm going to snap to the end of this porch here. Okay, now I'm going to move out, and when I get to the perpendicular point on the property line, I'll click there, and then I'll right click to drop that down. So what the perpendicular snap does is it takes whatever the point that I've placed here, and then when I approach a line, it gives me a perpendicular point on that line. So if I was to measure this angle, that should be a perfect 90-degree angle along here. Okay, if it was an angled line, then it would be at a different angle. Okay, so that's how we would use our perpendicular snap tool. Now the next snap tool is the intersection snap. Now the intersection is similar to the endpoint snap. When I select the intersection snap and I select a drawing tool, you'll see that the intersection is anywhere where a line turns, like so, just like all these endpoints are intersection points. Okay. Also, where I have a line that crosses. So if I come out here, you'll see that I have this is a line that crosses here, and I have a cross there. So any place that a line crosses or it changes directions is where I would be able to place a intersection snap. Similar to the intersection snap is one called a two-point intersection, which is the number 2 on the keyboard. I'll go ahead and click on the intersection snap tool, and I'll also select my foundation wall tool. Okay, now the intersection snap, it gives me this little circle which wants me to choose a line to set as my intersection line. So if I was to click on this little short line on the side of the porch, what it does is it creates an imaginary dotted line there. Anything that this line intersects with, I can now snap to. So if I click here, I'm going to go ahead and pull a line over, and I'll just turn my endpoint snap on there by hitting the E key. Alright, and then I'll right click. Alright, so I was able to pull that line back from a point on another line. Alright, now the next set of snap tools have to do with circles and arcs. Down here at the bottom, we're going to select the center point snap. So if I choose that, and then I choose, let's say, I'll just choose one of my 2D CAD tools here, okay, and I want to find the center of a circle, I'll get a little circular indicator there that tells me that I'm right on that circle. It also works with an arc or an ellipse, so if I click on the arc, I can find the center point of that arc pretty easily. Alright, the next snap tool is the tangent snap. Now I'm going to use my tangent snap in conjunction with the endpoint snap here. Now a tangent is a natural continuation of an arc. So what we can do here is I'm first going to use my my line multiple tool, and I'm going to snap to the endpoint of this arc here. Okay, and I'll turn the tangent snap on here. Now when I approach this curve or the circle, it gives me the natural tangent point here. So when I click on it, okay, now if I was to create a tangent from this point that goes up to this point, that would be the point that it's placed at. Okay, now I'll go ahead and go down the opposite side. Again, I have the endpoint snap there, and I'll find the tangent over here, which is right there, like so. Where this comes in handy is when I have like a parking lot island that has one arc size on this end and another arc size on this end. It makes it pretty easy to create those straight lines so that everything matches up correctly. Alright, so the next one is called a quadrant snap. Now, quadrant snap is going to find the 4 quadrants of a circle, and what I can do is I can select my quadrant snap here, and I'm going to again use the line multiple. Okay, so when I approach the 0 point, now that's from the center point, this is the 0 point on that circle. Okay, I get a little indicator, and then I get another indicator at the 90-degree point, and another indicator at 180 and 270 degrees. Okay, so that's relative to the center point of this circle. Okay, now that's how we use snap tools to create precision drawings. Now keep in mind that if you're not used to using snap tools, sometimes they can drive you a little crazy, because what's happening if you accidentally turn your snap tools on, your cursor is going to be pushed to other locations. When you have your snap tools on, you'll have a little red indicator that is moving around with your cursor. So if you see that red indicator, that means that your snap tools are on, and it may be pushing your cursor someplace where it doesn't want. So if you want to simply turn those off, you just tap the letter S on the keyboard, or turn the snap off indicator there, and then that turns all of the snap tools on regardless of which one is currently on. Okay, and that's the snap tools.